She left the cup there, steam curling into the morning light like it had something to say. The same ceramic mug she always used, white with a chipped rim. The one she once said reminded her of camping trips as a kid. It sat there, full, untouched, just like the words I never said. She was already gone, I think. I don't mean gone. I mean, the kind of gone where a person can still kiss you goodbye but somehow feel 3 continents away. Her keys were gone, her scarf was gone, her perfume was still hanging in the air like a question no one wanted to answer. And she hadn't even closed the front door properly. I watched that door swing slightly open in the breeze, the wind playing with it like a secret. That was the 3rd time this week. Monday, she said she forgot her wallet and ran back inside for it, but I never heard the door open or close again. Tuesday, she left for work and came home wearing a different jacket. She said it was Becca's, but Becca was in Florida. I know because she posted palm trees and mojitos at 3 p.m. And now Thursday, the day she always wore heels. The day she always left wearing that same rose-pink lipstick that I never once saw smudged. But today, she didn't wear lipstick or heels. She wore sneakers and lip balm, a t-shirt instead of a blouse. Casual, untraceable, like she was trying not to be remembered. I stood in the hallway, staring at that door, steam still rising from the mug beside me, and I didn't move. Not for 10 minutes. Maybe 20. My hand was still on the light switch from when she kissed me on the cheek and said, "Have a good day." I didn't respond. She noticed. She paused. Then, with just enough breath to make it sound like an accusation disguised as concern, she asked, "You're quiet this morning." I didn't answer right away. I blinked at her, studied her, tried to remember if she always tilted her head like that when she lied. Maybe I imagined it. Or maybe I just didn't want to imagine anything anymore. When I finally spoke, it came out soft, dry, like something I'd already said 100 times in my mind but never out loud. Because I've already said goodbye. She furrowed her brow. And then I added, just not out loud. That was all I gave her. She didn't ask what I meant. She just nodded once. A flicker of something panic? Regret crossed her face, but it vanished before it became real. She left without another word. That's how I knew everything I feared was true. Not because she confessed. Not because I had proof. But because she didn't even bother to pretend to care what I meant. The mug sat there all day. I didn't move it. I didn't touch the coffee. I didn't even clean the smudge her thumb had left on the handle. I just watched the steam finally disappear, like watching a ghost fade. I know how strange that sounds, holding a silent vigil for a cup of coffee. But when you live with someone who's already halfway out the door, you start clinging to anything they leave behind, even if it's just condensation on ceramic. It was Friday, which used to mean something. It used to be our tradition. We'd make frozen pizzas and sit on the floor watching awful movies we'd never finish. She'd wear those fuzzy socks with the holes in the heels, and I'd complain about the cheese being too rubbery, and she'd toss a pillow at me. Stupid, beautiful memories. I don't even know when those stopped. I think I kept the rituals going longer than she did, pretending it still mattered, like we were just in a rough patch. But last Friday, she didn't come home at all. She sent a text at 9:47 p.m. that said, "Working late, crashin' at Becca's, don't wait up too hard." That damn heart emoji hit harder than the lie, because it was rehearsed. Safe. Like something you'd send someone who never asked questions. I did ask, once. Months ago. I'd found a hotel charge on our joint card. Not expensive. Not flashy. But close. Too close. 10 minutes from her office, 15 from our house. I asked her about it over dinner. I remember the way her fork froze midair for a second before she smiled and said, "Team building retreat. One night thing. Boring, really." And I believed her. Or maybe I didn't. Maybe I just let it slide because believing her was easier than admitting the truth was already blooming between us like mold under paint. Ever since that night, I started noticing how much of her life I was no longer a part of. She had new playlists, new earrings, new books by authors she never liked before. Once I walked into the living room and heard her humming a tune I didn't recognize. When I asked what song it was, she looked startled. Said she didn't even realize she was humming. That's the thing about liars. They don't just tell lies. They live them, wear them, breathe them in so deep they forget which parts were ever real. That evening, after she left with her gym bag for what she called a late Pilates class, I sat on our bed and opened her closet. I didn't have a plan. I wasn't looking for evidence like a detective in a movie. I just wanted clarity, something that made sense. But what I found only broke me further. In the back of the closet, Behind a winter coat she hadn't worn in 2 years was a gift bag. Inside, a shirt. Men's. Still folded. Still with the tag. And not my size. Not my style. Alongside it, a small, handwritten card that said, "Can't wait to see you in this. H." That's it. Just an initial. Not hers. Not mine. Just a cold, anonymous letter from someone who apparently had the right to dress the man she was dreaming of. I sat there for a long time with that shirt on my lap, wondering if this was what grief felt like when it didn't involve death. When the person you're mourning is still alive, still breathing, still sleeping beside you while their heart is curled up somewhere else. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just folded it all back the way I found it. Gently, quietly, like a man who knew the difference between losing a battle and surrendering to a war that ended without his permission. I haven't told her I saw it. I don't think I ever will. Not because I'm noble. Not because I'm forgiving. But because deep down, I think I knew long before the shirt. Long before the coffee. Long before the lipstick disappeared. I knew the night she stopped asking me to tell her about my day. That's the night I started saying goodbye. Not with words. Not with a note. Just with silence. And she still hasn't heard it. The strangest part of all this? I didn't feel anger. Not the kind people expect. No broken plates. No yelling. Not even jealousy in the traditional sense. What I felt was displacement. Like someone had taken a photo of my life and quietly swapped me out for someone else. Same frame, same house, same furniture, but a different man in the picture. And I was just watching it happen, powerless to stop it. There's a specific moment that cracked me further than I thought possible. It was so ordinary on the surface, so painfully domestic that no one else would have noticed. But I did. We were brushing our teeth, standing side by side. The mirror in our bathroom is wide, big enough for two people to exist in at once. And that night, for the first time in years, I realized she wasn't looking at her reflection. She was looking past me. Not at me. Not even through me. Just away. Far, far away. Like her mind was rehearsing some other life. With someone who wasn't holding a toothbrush. Later that same night, she left her phone on the bed. It buzzed. Once. Then again. She was in the shower, humming some song I didn't recognize. And the screen lit up. Normally, I would have looked away. I used to pride myself on being the kind of husband who didn't snoop. Trust was sacred to me. But that was before. Before the missing Fridays. Before the hotel receipt. Before the shirt that didn't belong to me. So I looked. 2 messages. Both from a contact saved only as T. The first said, "Thinking about you right now." The second, "Can't wait to feel your skin again." I stared at those words for a long time. Not just because of what they meant, but because they were so intimate and yet clinical. Like something you send when you know the person reading it won't challenge you. Like something you send when your affair has become routine. She never mentioned anyone named T. I don't know who it is. I don't know what he looks like. But I know this. He isn't afraid of being discovered. That message wasn't disguised. It wasn't deleted. It was right there, glowing in plain sight. That's how far I'd fallen in her eyes. She didn't even need to hide the evidence anymore. And yet, when she stepped out of the shower, towel around her hair, she smiled at me like everything was fine. She sat next to me. She scrolled her phone. She kissed my cheek and asked if I wanted to order Thai or Mexican for dinner. And I answered. Like a fool. Like a man too far gone to scream. "Whatever you want," I said. But something shifted in me. Not loud. Not fast. Just quietly. I stood up, went into the guest room, where she never goes, and pulled out an old box from the closet. One of those boxes you swear you'll throw away during spring cleaning but never do. Inside were random things from another life. Our wedding invitation, a postcard from our honeymoon, a folded-up note she wrote me 10 years ago that simply read, "I feel safest with you." I unfolded that note 5 times. 6. 7. I think I just wanted to see if the words would change. They didn't. But they felt written by someone who no longer existed. I put the note in my wallet. Not to keep. To remind myself. That once, I was loved. Or at least believed I was. That same night, she fell asleep early. Her phone lit up again at 1:13 a.m. I didn't move. I didn't touch it. I just listened to her breathing change. The kind of breathing people do when they're pretending to sleep through guilt. I whispered something I hadn't said in months, maybe years. "Do you still love me?" I waited, just in case she was awake, just in case there was a miracle. But no answer came, just her back turned toward me, and the soft glow of someone else's message still pulsing on her screen. That Saturday morning, I didn't pretend anymore. Not to her. Not to myself. I didn't ask what her plans were. I didn't offer to make coffee. I didn't even mention the text from T I saw the night before. I just watched her float through the house like nothing was broken. Like she didn't carry pieces of me out the door every time she left in those perfectly coordinated outfits that used to be for me and are now, clearly, for someone else. She smiled like always. Wore her hair a little looser. New earrings again, tiny silver studs I'd never seen before. And as she adjusted them in the mirror by the hallway, she glanced back at me and asked, "Big plans today?" I said no. But what I meant was, just watching everything fall apart in slow motion. That morning was different though, because for the first time in months, she seemed nervous. Her voice wavered slightly when she said she might be out for a while. She used those exact words. For a while. Not meeting Becca. Not groceries. Not yoga. Just a foggy, open-ended a while. That kind of vagueness only sounds innocent to people who haven't been cheated on. I watched her tie her shoelaces, same sneakers as Thursday. I noticed her check her phone twice before leaving. And I caught the way she paused at the door, like she wanted to say something. Or confess something. But instead, she just adjusted her ponytail and disappeared into the soft hum of morning traffic. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. Instead, I opened my laptop and started a file I named just in case. Not because I had a plan. Not yet. But because I needed something real. Something solid. Something that didn't feel like air slipping through my fingers. I began writing everything I'd noticed over the last few months. The unexplained absences. The lies she told without blinking. The new clothes. The gift bag with the men's shirt. The messages. The silence. I wrote it like a report. Like a man documenting the disappearance of his own marriage. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just typed. Slowly. Carefully. As if the truth was something that needed to be printed out and notarized before it could be accepted. I spent hours doing this. The sun rose high. The light shifted across the floor. She didn't call. Didn't text. Didn't check in. At 4:16 p.m., I finally got up and checked her side of the closet again. Not for evidence, not for revenge, but because I wanted to know what kind of woman I was losing. And what I found nearly dropped me to my knees. Behind a stack of scarves was a small black notebook. Nothing fancy, just a spiral-bound journal. I hesitated before opening it. But I did. And the first page nearly made me drop it. Things I can't say out loud. It wasn't a diary. It wasn't even about me, not directly. It was a collection of little entries, each one more revealing than the last. She'd written about someone named Theo. That's when T finally had a name. She wrote about how he made her laugh. How he sees the version of me I forgot I was. She wrote, "It feels like breathing again. I don't know how much longer I can lie to E. He's a good man. But I feel like I'm watching myself die when I'm with him." I read those lines over and over. Not because I wanted to punish myself, but because a part of me still needed to know whether it was my fault. Whether I missed something. Failed at something. And all I could think was, she never gave me the chance to be the man she missed. She just replaced me. Quietly. Softly. Strategically. And now she was writing love notes to another man in a notebook that she buried behind winter scarves like some twisted time capsule. But here's what really broke me. The last entry wasn't about Theo. It was about me. It was short. Only one sentence. He's becoming too quiet. I think he knows. And she was right. She just didn't know how much. That night, she came home smiling. Hair tousled by wind. Cheeks warm with cold air or something stronger. She had that scent again. Something floral but unfamiliar, like a perfume sample stolen from someone else's life. And as soon as she stepped through the door, I knew she had no idea I'd read the notebook. No idea I'd spent hours memorizing her handwriting. No idea the weight I now carried in silence, while she carried nothing but her purse and an empty water bottle. She hummed as she kicked off her shoes. Hummed. Like everything was just fine. Like this wasn't a house held together by taped-up lies and one man's inability to scream. I watched her from the kitchen doorway. She dropped her coat on the chair and walked straight to the fridge, like this was still her home, like she still belonged here. And for a second, I questioned everything again. That's what people like me do. We don't accuse. We don't break things. We doubt ourselves to the point of insanity. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe Theo was just a nickname. Maybe the texts were flirty but harmless. Maybe she was just venting. Maybe I wasn't enough, and she needed to feel more alive. That last one always gets me. Because if someone told you the person you love was drowning, Would you really blame them for gasping for air, even if they reached for another hand? She asked if I wanted tea. I said no. She said she was tired and heading to bed early. I nodded. She kissed me lightly, like I was made of glass, or regret, or both. And then she was gone, up the stairs, into the bedroom. I stood in the kitchen alone, lights dimmed, the hum of the refrigerator sounding like static in a dead conversation. That's when I noticed her phone. She'd left it charging on the kitchen counter. Unattended. No passcode. Face up. A door left unlocked. I didn't go for the texts. Not right away. I didn't need more proof. What I wanted was to know what version of me she described to others. Because sometimes the most painful thing isn't that someone cheated. It's that they rewrote your character in someone else's story. Her email app was open, and there they were, drafts. Dozens of them. Unsent. Maybe meant to stay that way. Maybe she wrote them to purge. Or maybe she was planning to hit send eventually, when she was finally ready to detonate what was left of us. One of them was titled, "To Eldon, When It's Time." She never hit send, but she wrote it. Every word of it. It started like a goodbye letter and ended like an obituary. She wrote, "You were a kind man. You tried to be what I needed, even when I didn't know what that was. I think you always saw me slipping, but you were too gentle to grab my wrist. And I was too selfish to stay. If you're reading this, I've already made the choice. Please don't blame yourself. The truth is, you deserve someone who didn't look out the window every time you spoke." I didn't finish reading. I couldn't. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't mourning the affair anymore. I was mourning the version of her who used to believe in us. And she was right. I had seen her slipping. I'd watched her inch away every week, every dinner, every quiet car ride where I filled the silence and she only nodded. I never raised my voice. Never gave her a reason to hate me. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe love doesn't survive on kindness alone. Maybe it needs fire, too. And all I'd offered was warmth. I left the phone where it was. I went upstairs. I lay beside her, listening to her breath in the dark. Even asleep, she was curled toward the edge of the bed, as if muscle memory had already decided we weren't touching anymore. I stared at the ceiling, and the words from her draft repeated in my head like a drumbeat. You were too gentle to grab my wrist. Maybe. But I was finally strong enough to let go. I woke up before her the next morning, just like always. Not because I slept well, insomnia had become a second skin, but because I didn't want to miss the moment. The moment when she opened her eyes, stretched like nothing was fractured, and wandered into the bathroom with that distant softness in her gaze. That morning, though, I didn't make coffee. I didn't set out breakfast. I just sat on the edge of the guest bed with her journal on my lap, and the phrase she had written echoing louder than ever in my chest. You were too gentle to grab my wrist. I must have read it 100 times by now, as if some alternate meaning would eventually emerge, as if the ink might apologize for what her voice never did. But the truth is, I wasn't looking for closure. I was looking for the moment I let this happen. The crack in the wall I ignored. Downstairs, I heard her feet on the hardwood. She didn't call out. She never does anymore. When she entered the living room and saw me just sitting there, her expression didn't change. No guilt. No surprise. Just observation. Like she was watching a roommate, not a husband. She asked if I was okay. I said nothing. She tried again, but this time, her voice had a thread of irritation. Eldon, seriously. What's going on with you lately? There it was again. That annoyed concern. The kind you use when someone else's pain starts to inconvenience your comfort. I looked up at her, and for the first time in months, I held her gaze without blinking, without softening. You keep asking why I'm so quiet, I said. It's because I've already said goodbye, just not out loud. She froze, keys in one hand, phone in the other. And for a moment, the mask slipped. Not entirely, but enough. Enough for me to see the flicker of recognition. The realization that maybe, just maybe, I knew more than I ever let on. She didn't ask what I meant. She didn't demand clarity. She didn't scream or cry or fall apart like the movies tell us people do. She just stood there, blinking, calculating the safest next sentence. I don't know what you think you know, she said finally. Not a denial. Not a confession. Just strategy. That sentence told me everything. Told me that she wasn't sorry. She was afraid of what I might do with the truth. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't show her the notebook. I didn't mention Theo. I just stood up, walked to the kitchen, and calmly took the photo off the fridge. The one from our wedding, her in a loose braid, me in a navy suit that didn't quite fit, both of us laughing like we'd been promised forever. I turned it over and placed it on the table. Then I went to the hallway closet, pulled out the overnight bag I had packed the night before, and said, "I'll be gone by this evening." She stared at me as if I'd suddenly spoken another language. "What are you talking about?" she said, voice rising. "Gone where? Why are you doing this?" And for a moment, her voice trembled, not from sorrow, but from the loss of control. I didn't answer, because I wasn't walking out to punish her. I wasn't trying to make her chase me, or beg, or feel the burn of her own choices. I was walking out because I'd finally accepted what she refused to say. She had already made her choice. I was just giving it space to breathe. As I zipped the bag, I heard her ask one more thing, softly this time, almost like the version of her I used to know. "Do you hate me?" The question landed somewhere strange. Not heavy, just misplaced. Because hate would mean I still wanted something from her. Attention, emotion, revenge. But I didn't. What I felt was beyond hate. Not forgiveness either. Something colder. Still, like the air in a house no one lives in anymore. I said, "No. I just finally stopped waiting for the person you used to be." She didn't follow me when I left. She didn't stop me. And that silence, that absence of resistance, it hurt more than anything she could have said. Because now I knew for certain I had been replaced long ago. Quietly. Like background noise you don't even realize is gone until the room is dead still. And in that stillness, I walked out. The first night alone wasn't what I expected. I didn't cry. I didn't drink. I didn't pace the hotel room like some broken man in a drama series. I sat in silence, fully clothed, on a bed that wasn't mine, staring at the bland painting above the headboard, a watercolor skyline that felt as distant and artificial as everything I'd been living in for the last year. I remember watching the fan blades rotate above me, slower than they should have, like even they were hesitant to move forward. That night, there was no relief, no clarity, only the hum of nothingness pressing against my chest, reminding me that she wouldn't text. She wouldn't ask where I was. And worst of all, she wouldn't care. By morning, I still hadn't slept. The coffee from the lobby tasted like cardboard, but I drank it anyway. I sat by the window watching people pass by, trying to imagine what their lives looked like behind those rushed footsteps and distracted glances. I envied them, even the ones who looked miserable, because misery in motion still means something is alive. I felt like I'd already died. Not all at once, but in parts. Like every ignored question, every turn back, every fake smile chipped away at me until I was no longer a person, just a shape she stepped around. I thought about calling someone. My brother. My old college friend. Even my mother. But how do you explain a slow implosion? How do you describe a betrayal that never once shouted your name but lived in the corners of your home? Instead, I opened my laptop and clicked on the file I had started earlier, just in case. I added more. Not because I planned to use it for anything legal. Just to remember. Remember how easily someone can disappear without ever leaving. One line stood out among the rest. I typed it slowly. I used to love her with my whole life. Now I'm just trying to remember how to own mine again. That afternoon, I walked. For hours. No destination. Just movement. The city felt unfamiliar, though I'd lived in it for over a decade. I noticed things I'd never seen before, a bookstore tucked behind a laundromat, a mural of a woman with a burning heart, a street musician playing violin near an alleyway filled with silence. I sat on a bench across from a park and watched a couple laugh while feeding pigeons. They couldn't have been older than 25. They looked like they still believed in words like, always. And for a brief second, I hated them for it. Not because I wished them failure, but because I used to be that version of myself. The one who believed love could be a permanent place, instead of a lease with no warning before eviction. That evening, I checked my phone. Nothing from her. I wasn't surprised. What did surprise me was a message from a number I didn't recognize. "Hey, I don't know if you know me, but I think we should talk. It's about Hallie." At first, I thought it was a prank. Or worse, him. Theo. Maybe reaching out to gloat. But there was something in the tone. Hesitant. Human. Not arrogant. I didn't reply right away. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Then I opened it again, reread it, and finally typed, "Who is this?" Seconds passed. Then, "My name's Clara. I work with her." Or did. There it was. The first crack in the silence I hadn't created. Someone else stepping into the story, and I didn't know whether to lean in or run. I wrote back, "What do you mean?" Her reply came minutes later. "It's not my place. But I've seen things. Heard things. And I felt guilty for a while now. You seem like you deserve the truth." I put the phone down. Not because I didn't want to know, but because I wasn't sure if I could survive hearing it out loud. I never met Clara in person. We exchanged a few more messages, but I asked her not to share details. I didn't need more proof. I didn't need timelines or photos or confessions spoken by someone else's mouth. What I needed was peace. She told me one last thing, though, something that stayed with me. She wrote, "You were never the fool, Eldon. You were just honest in a room full of liars." And I realized then, it wasn't that I didn't see the truth. It was that I refused to stop loving her, even as she erased me piece by piece. The weeks that followed were strange. Not hard in the ways people assume. There were no public scenes, no dramatic phone calls, no courtrooms or screaming matches. Just a slow unraveling of shared accounts, furniture, frozen dinners, and forgotten keys. Hallie never begged, never asked me to reconsider. She sent one email, short, polite, and cold as marble, asking if I wanted anything else from the house. I replied with one word, no. What I didn't tell her was that I had already taken the one thing I came for. Me. Not the man she fell out of love with, but the man I left behind trying to be enough for someone who was never going to stay. In losing her, I found the parts of myself I'd buried, my voice, my stillness, my truth. It didn't happen all at once. Healing never does. But it started quietly, just like the end had. I moved into a small apartment above a bookstore downtown. Nothing fancy. Just a place that smelled like paper and dust and potential. The landlord was an older woman named June who greeted me with a smile that felt like it had seen the worst and survived it. She gave me a discount on rent after I helped fix a leaky faucet without being asked. The second week, she left a loaf of banana bread by my door with a note that said, "Some silences deserve comfort." I didn't cry when I read that, but I felt something crack open, soft and warm. I started going for walks again. Not the kind where I'm trying to escape my own thoughts, but the kind where I let them breathe. I found a park near the water with a crooked bench that nobody ever seems to sit on. That's where I go when I need to remember who I am. I read there. I journal there. I sit and watch the world not end. A month later, I found myself laughing. Not forced. Not polite. Real. A book I was reading had this terrible pun in it, and I laughed like no one was listening, because no one was. And that was the beauty of it. For the first time in over a year, I wasn't performing grief. I was living. Quietly. Honestly. Fully. One Sunday morning, as sunlight spilled through my window, I caught my reflection in the glass. And for the first time in a long time, I recognized him. Not perfect. Not healed. But whole. I stood there, barefoot, coffee in hand, hair a mess, and I whispered something out loud, just for me. Goodbye. Not to Hallie. To the version of myself who waited too long. Who begged in silence. Who loved without being loved back. That man deserved rest. And now he had it. So yes, this story began with silence. With betrayal. With a woman who couldn't speak the truth. But it ends with something else. Not revenge. Not bitterness. But quiet freedom. The kind that doesn't need to be announced. The kind you feel deep in your chest when you realize. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You're already home.